Hi everyone, my name is Peter. Thanks for joining me at OurWorshipSound. Today I want to talk about creating dynamics on keyboard. Dynamics are one of those things that can create so much life within our playing. And so often we get so concerned with playing the right chords and playing interesting rhythms and melodies and putting it all together in just the right technical way that we lose the life of what we play. And dynamics is one of those things that can put that life back into what we play and create an interest and an inspiring piece of music. So what we're going to do is talk about some different ways we can increase dynamics. And first of all, let's talk about what we mean by dynamics. So first of all, dynamics means something is changing. It's the opposite of static or staying the same. And it's not just, oh, that person is dynamic, is loud and vibrant. We don't know what loud and vibrant is unless we also have low key and mellow and soft. So creating that range is where the interest in our music really comes from. So some different ways to create a bigger dynamic range on keyboard. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at how those play out in a really dynamic song and really well-known song. That is Oceans by Hillsong United. And we'll show how dynamics create some of the moments in that song. So first of all, one of the biggest things you can do to increase your dynamic range is simply to increase your volume range. And this might seem pretty obvious, but if you're playing a grand piano or even a well-sampled electric piano or electronic piano, you're going to get different timbres from your sounds as you play them louder or softer. When you play softer sounds on a piano, you get a more mellow tone out of them. Like at the beginning of Oceans, it's just. And then later on, as you play with a faster approach or a harder approach, you get. There's a much brighter timbre to the attack, especially on those notes. So create that difference in the dynamics in how you play piano by really appreciating the depth of playing soft and the excitement of creating the louder attack in your sound as well. So if you're playing more synth patches, your sounds aren't necessarily going to be as responsive as a piano would, but you do need to be ready to manage the volume of your sounds. A couple ways you can do that. One, if you're playing internal sounds on your keyboard, you probably have some controls that you can adjust the volume with it. If you're doing something in the computer, like in main stage, make sure you're ready to control your sounds through an interface or MIDI device. A way that I like to do it is to set up different dynamic layers for different parts of songs, and that way I can just click a button and go to the next one. So for example, on Oceans, it's very soft at the beginning. And then I can just hit a button and go to something that's a little bit louder and more dynamic. And then it's louder still for another part. So if you're using synth patches, just be ready to manage the volumes for different parts of the song to create that dynamic range. Secondly, you can play more or fewer notes. In the beginning of Oceans, we have just very simple, just one chord per chord change. That creates a more subdued feel in the beginning. And then we get to the instrumental later on, and it's. So just the sheer number of notes creates that dynamic range. Most musicians are going to tend toward playing extra notes, playing more notes than they need to. But if you don't have more subdued sections, then those notes that you're playing just sound busy. So we don't want to sound busy, we want to create the dynamic range. So have sections where you're willing to just play very simply and play one chord with conviction and just let it sit and then rest. And then when you do play more notes, it'll create more excitement. Okay. Number 3, use higher or lower pitches to create a bigger dynamic range. And this we want to talk about a little bit because it's not just that you create a lower dynamic by playing lower notes, and you play a higher dynamic by playing higher notes, because you can play with a nice soft and sweet dynamic range by playing only up high. Really where we create the dynamic range here with our range is by increasing the size of our range and mixing high sounds and low sounds together. So if we want a low sound, we stay in a fairly narrow range of the keyboard, whether that's in the middle or low or high. And it's when we branch out from there So you get the wider dynamic range from increasing your range at that point. So if you're someone who tends to get just kind of stuck in the middle of the keyboard, start working to branch out from there and increase your dynamic range that way. Okay, number 4, it's probably going to be geared a little bit more toward using synth sounds. We've already talked about how playing a piano or even a sampled piano, you get brighter or more mellow sounds from how hard you press the keys. But when you're using synth sounds as maybe layers for what you're playing on keyboard, when you start to mix in brighter sounds, it takes the dynamic up, and if you're using more mellow or darker sounds, it takes the dynamic level down. So let me show you an example here. If I'm using a dark sounding pad, it creates that subdued feeling, okay? And if I begin to bring in more high frequencies, it right away begins to raise the dynamic. Okay, and you can do that a couple of ways. I did it in the Oceans patches by adding some brighter bell-like sounds. And even in the medium level, you hear this sweeping pad that has a lot of high frequency to it, and that raises the dynamic. So you can add layers to your sound. There's another way that you can do it though. So for example, I just have this pad sound in here. Here's what that sounds like. It's fairly dark right now, but with a simple adjustment, I can take that pad sound and raise the dynamic. It's not a volume change per se, it's a frequency change. And there's a simple adjustment that I'll show you how to do that can create that. And here's the pad in main stage. And if I go up to the ES2 synthesizer, there's this really simple adjustment that creates that change, and it's called the filter cutoff. And so this cutoff, what it is it's cutting out the high frequencies. So right now, the sound behind it has all the high frequencies taken out, whereas you raise that frequency and it lets more of the high frequencies back in. So I've just connected a knob on my setup with that control for that sound, and that's a real good way to create some interesting dynamics changes there. So again, that's a little bit more synth focused, but that's another way that we can increase our dynamic range from creating really subdued moments where they create the anticipation for louder parts later in songs. So I hope that was helpful for you. I do have some products that I either demonstrated or referenced while I was doing this video, and you can find all of these from this video if you go to OurWorshipSound.com/dynamics. There's the Oceans Custom Main Stage patch. There's the Core Sounds library, which I use some of that here. All the techniques that I showed are shown in the Main Stage keyboard course. And if you're a keyboard player, you'll definitely want to check out Fluent Piano for techniques as well. So all of that, if you just go to OurWorshipSound.com/dynamics. I hope that was helpful. And thanks for watching. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you soon.